I'm live on Up Live TV. I'm live on Castbox, and I'm live on YouTube. It is the prodigious, the prominent professor at Proclamation News. Any other where, anywhere else across the nation. Thank you for coming through supporting the show. It is the 10th of March in the UK, and it's 3 p.m. Thank you all for coming through. Appreciate it. I appreciate all the support, all the loyal observers, people staying preserved, coming through. Morgan has left. The Good Morning show. The Good Morning show. He's left. Bit of a shock there. I think he had a bit of a predicament. It was in the show, and he's left. He walked out of the show. He's now. I'm not sure what he's going to do next. I know he's part of the union, so he'll always be in some formality of work. He's quite an optimistic guy. I like to see UK politics, more so UK politics than any other nation, because I only follow what's in the mainstream media within the UK and local constituents where I am and where I've been in Hertfordshire and Essex, also looking at different forms of criminology, different provocations that arise in different family households. Anyway, as you know, we are proudly sponsored by PSS Alarms. Very adequate and pragmatic works carried out. All areas are covered, including central station monitoring provided. All work done according to insurance requirements. This is a friend of mine's company. He's carried out works in Hurricane stepmother's house in Hertfordshire, Potter's Bar. He's carried out adequate works in Casabar restaurant and hotel in Essex and Ilford, I believe. He also carried out a lot of works in different restaurants, offices, different businesses. Please call Tariq Khan. He's a nice, honourable gentleman, I might say. He's very, very professional, very adequate with style and sense. He doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. He's not a very nice chap, in fact. His phone number is 07908 07908 216142. If you call him from another mobile device out of England and you're in England for some reason, you've got a foreign phone, it's the English code +44 rather than 0. Installation and maintenance of intruder alarms, fire alarms, CCTV, all work guaranteed and certified to SSAIB standards. 24-hour call-out service can provide CCTV for pubs, clubs, restaurants, or new business setup. Secure your business. Mention Professor Johnson for extra discount. Secure your home, secure your business. Your safety and priorities within your business are paramount, so think safety, think first. Secure your equity, secure your family. Also, I just want to suggest you guys, we've got the election coming up in May, 6th of May. Then we've got, I just want to say, we've got something big to look forward to for your sports fanatics. I know some of you are not into the same sort of sports as me, maybe into football. I mean, I did used to like football and the various sports. I was a pretty all-round athlete in my younger days. Despite my secondary brain, I didn't like going out in the cold. But we have Billy Joe Saunders of Welling Hatfield constituency fighting Canelo Alvarez. I think he's fighting Canelo Alvarez backyard as well. So that's massive for the boxing industry. That's massive for the UK. I mean, boxing to me, I must say, it is politics. Is how many bums you put on seats. And Billy Joe Saunders has had a phenomenal career, being a middleweight world champion. He's also he's one of the best of the British in middleweight boxing. Up there on standards above Eubank Jr. Although that was a very close fight, but he's up there above because of the legacy that he's had. His career. That's why he's above the likes of Eubank Jr. Staff be paid. How much will staff be paid? I mean, this is, so I heard Sir Keir Starmer having a bit of a go at Boris Johnson. I love Boris Johnson. I will support him in every give and take thing that he gets given. It's not hard being in his position as Prime Minister, I must admit. Everyone must admit, whoever's Prime Minister, you can't please everybody with your words and how you want to govern the country. NHS, obviously, they are key workers. You've got to try and keep them happy, haven't we? You've got to keep all the key workers happy in such a predicament that we're in at the moment. Absolutely. There's a bit of a squabbling going on with Boris and Sir Keir Starmer about deducting their wages. It's a bit of a shock, but also they've got to subsidise the money lost through the public austerity that phasing through the pandemic influenza that we're up against. So they're obviously trying to get their money back through cutting back wages. Can they cut back on infrastructure? Maybe, perhaps. Other ways around it. Is there other ways to still keep these NHS staff happy? We don't know. I don't know the ins and outs inside Parliament and rules and regulations. Neither do you, neither do we. And Sir Keir Starmer knows somewhat, but then it's all about spending, is it? So they've got to subsidise something. So I don't know what to suggest on the NHS staff's wages. I really don't. The government has recommended that NHS staff in England should receive a 1% pay increase this year. But then we'll talk about deduction. Many other public sector workers will have their pay frozen, with the government warning that a country's finances are under huge pressure because of the pandemic. Health unions have criticised that 1% pay proposal, and one representing nurses is calling for a 12.5% increase instead. How is pay decided? Around half the public sector workers, including NHS staff, police workers and teachers, have their salaries negotiated by independent pay review bodies. These pay bodies, made up of individuals not directly attached to the relevant department, but with experience in economics and employee relations, work with the government departments, unions and other groups to come up with a recommendation on how pay could change each year. See that I'm jumping to conclusions. I heard a little bit of James O'Brien on LBC this morning. It wasn't actually James O'Brien coming up with the procurement. It's actually inside Parliament was overhearing the conversation. What are key workers paid? 11 charts on what's happened to the NHS. This recommendation is non-binding. In November, the government announced that its public sector workers would have their pay frozen in 2021 to 22. I mean, I do observe the Parliament TV. I don't know if you guys listen to Parliament TV, and I come live on my radio channel, YouTube, Castbox, Up Live TV. I emphasise what I see and what I hear. So you'll read it in the next tomorrow's newspaper. It's front bench politics, because live and direct in front of me most days. The exception was for those on salaries under £24,000 on NHS staff. Where does 1% come in? The 1% increase was recommended by the Department for Health and Social Care, DHSC, for 2021 to 22. It submitted evidence laid out in a 115-page document to the NHS pay review body. This body looks at almost 1.5 million people, including nurses, midwives and health assistants working for the NHS across the UK. They do not include doctors, dentists and some senior staff who have their own pay bodies or agreements. The DHSC cited the uncertain financial situation and current low inflation. The inflation is under 1%, but the Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts that it will rise to 1.5 this year, which would make 1% increase a real terms cut. On March the 9th, the head of NHS England, Sir Simon Stevens, told a committee of MPs that the Health Service long-term plan published in 2019 assumed a 2.1 increase this year. But he said things have changed since then and said it should now be up to the pay review body. The pay review body will now take evidence from other groups, including unions and NHS bodies, and do its own calculations before making its recommendation around May. It could recommend a larger pay increase, but the DHSC has said anything more than 1% would require reprioritisation of the NHS budget. Any increase in salaries is expense because of the huge number of staff working in health service. Currently, almost half the NHS budget goes on staffing costs, a total of 51.6 billion. So a 1% pay increase across the board would equate to more than 500 million a year. What does this cover? In theory, the pay review bodies make recommendations for all staff across the UK. However, it's up to individual UK nations to decide whether to accept them. In Scotland, health and social care staff have already received a one-off COVID payment up to £500. They also received a 1% interim pay increase for this year. The placeholder until a final decision is made. The Welsh Government said it has tried not to set a ceiling on its recommendation to the pay review body. Anyone working for the NHS or family, mother and father or friend. How NHS pay changed over time. In 2010 to 11, it was decided the pay would be frozen for all public sector workers as part of the government austerity measures. Strict pay freeze or pay caps were implemented until 2018 to 19, when the government removed these limits and 3-year pay agreement was implemented for NHS staff in England. But the impact on inflation means that over the whole period, some salaries are worth less than they were a decade ago. For example, a newly qualified nurse starting in 2021, I would be earning about 3% less than one who started in 2010 to 11, once we account for inflation and impact of pay freeze and caps. Nurses are just one part of the NHS workforce, and the pay agreement implemented in 2018 to 2019 affected different staff members in different ways. For example, the agreement meant that the wages of those in the very lowest band, such as housekeeping or security staff, increased by almost 30% over the past 3 years. Substantial amount, and they deservedly, they're working in like the red zone area, aren't they? You go to World War, there's a chance you could get killed. They're working red alert, working through COVID patients. They deserve red alert pay rise, quite amicably, if I'm honest. Staff at the top of their pay bands would have had a smaller pay increase, as it's important to point out the pay of many NHS staff increases as their experience grows and they move up within pay bands. So you can see Sir Keir Starmer's argument. But as I was saying, I'm not one to litigate Boris Johnson. There's a reason why everyone's managing, if you know what I mean. There's a reason for his output, the way he come across. We can't. There's a freeze at the moment. That's why I overheard. There's a freeze on the pay increase at the moment. But at least it's been brought to his horizon by Sir Keir Starmer. Maybe he's going to look at changing some defects. I don't know what. Anyway, there's many promises to save my old constituency in Hatfield, Hertfordshire. Since the industry declined in the 1990s, residents and politicians are part of Welling Hatfield Council. The leg park and the statue there, it's absolutely phenomenal. It looks nice. Hatfield's actually a bad place to be. But even during the period between 1990 and 2000, plans were afoot to develop new areas of Hatfield, with the Galleria expansion of the University of Hertfordshire and Hatfield Business Park most notable example. The development of the Galleria coming, it took it over in 2005. I'm very well, thank you. Crazy Irish Evil, how you doing? Just doing my journalism. I'll be with you shortly, buddy. Hatfield's population was also beginning throughout the 1990s, reaching 29,000 in the early 2000s, which was thousands more than Newtown builders envisioned. This was part of the due to the creation of homes at former aerospace sites and flats near the centre. Around in 2002, MPs warned of the spiral of decline at the Transport Local Government and the Regions Committee in unattractive town centres, including Hatfield, which is the local MP or constituent of Hatfield. They recommend that open spaces and mixed leisure and shopping uses in the town centre needed to be created. Housing needed to be improved as it was put in a short space of time and there was excessive dependence on cars and bus services. I'll tell you what is phenomenal in Hatfield is the Hertfordshire Constabulary, the police force there, how they work. They're working hard day in, day out. As director of the University of Hertfordshire Urbanism Unit ain't around the car. The walking and cycling environment is not ideal. It's about how you're going to Galleria. I think you've got to pay to park around most of Hatfield, which is hard. You know, it's well known for Queen Elizabeth I, Hatfield House. You know, it's nice to find space by the low buildings in the town centre, which has gaps, made it less attractive. When asked if the founders should have reconsidered the town a bit more, she said, "It seemed the right thing to do at the time." And she maintained that it would be a shame if the 20th century design disappeared, as there is a lot of heritage in the way Hatfield has continued to look even today. There has been lots of attempts to plan Hatfield town centre, she added, but this was very top down and there was no sense of ownership from local people, so it was difficult to make things work. English Partnerships, a previous government agency focusing on regeneration, responded to 2002 study saying that work was going on to improve Hatfield town centre, and this is when the latest plans emerged. There was hope that the earliest that the development would likely commence in 2004, and Welling Hatfield Borough Council then set about making the compulsory purchase of buildings in Hatfield town centre. Planning permission for the town centre redevelopment scheme was given in March 2007, several months before the financial crisis hit and Northern Rock had a run on its banks. And when Rupert Wood, regional manager for Sin Mo Dwen, who were the developers working with the council in 2008, promised they would not be walking away, it seemed the project would continue. Mr. Wood said, "It is clear many people in the town were pleased when news of plans to regenerate Hatfield town centre was announced back in 2002, and now feel that the whole process has taken far too long and that the project has been significantly delayed." But the project was put on hold indefinitely due to the financial crisis. However, ideas for the future outline Hertfordshire Guide to Growth 2021. Did it offer Hatfield some glimpse of the future away from shopping streets that were not linked to travel thoroughfares of the town? This far from added. This really challenged assumptions of what was needed in town centre and talked about active travel. Hatfield also won a bid of 100,000 from the 1.5 million government-funded scheme devised by the Mars Portas, star of the BBC Queens of Shops in 2012, to provide it to the town with a portable undiscovered staging area and event space in town centre to host community events and activities. They've got like built-in table tennis tables there, you know, for families or children to go and have fun while the mothers shop. You know, mums like to go in their women's shop and then the fathers can sit outside playing table tennis with the kids. It's a great invention, I believe. Some people not inspired by the free gifts that the government has spent out for people just sitting there. They just abuse what they got. However, empty shops in Hatfield town centre have continued to be a feature of the town, with around 10% empty every year since 2008 until this year, which went up to 16.5 in 2020. Next up, What are the council's plans now and its vision for 2030? This Well in Hatfield Times will consider what planning has done for Hatfield. It has been successful and what can hope for in the future. It is undertaking this project in light of the numerous letters and comments it has received from people worried about the new developments and upset at the legacy of new town planning. This is also in the context of Hatfield's regeneration speeding up. The anniversaries of this year's breaks man are now 70 and the Galleria now 30, as well as the government's recent promise to build back better. I mean, I've got to say, Hertfordshire University as well. There's so many youth for today. I mean, a lot of people better there, better their horizon, better their prosperity. It is quite phenomenal to see the youth today going, in uni. I mean, I was in Open Heaven Church. I was part of the choir. I was convener facilitator. They've got some of the young in their 20s. Still men, but they've grown up to be grown men like myself. There's some clever kids in the choir, like in their 24s, 26s, and some years. How many youth groups shut? Well in Hatfield is St John's Youth and Community Centre explains many young people want to see their friend now closed doors. It gives parents at the release that as always, as well as children. They've missed a lot, but stay hopeful. We are coming back. Be patient. Another volunteer, Vanessa, added that the trend towards online interaction has ramped up during the pandemic, creating mental health and safeguarding issues. We don't have a true picture of what's happening right now. Sadly, some teenagers are home in a not safe environment. Kids are isolated from social world and constantly on their phones or Instagram with no privacy or internet safety. She thinks this creates issues and potential county line drug dealers have a way to groom vulnerable children without someone seeing them. Mental health in the next 2 years is going to be a big thing during the last year and a half. There has been a lot of pressure on children at the moment. Some people also cannot go to youth clubs as they pose a risk. The youth volunteer who has spent over 10 years working with young people explained that excluded kids with behavioural issues also have no outlet. It is better to have more youth outreach work out to the community. Dwayne Cook, who runs the centre, thinks that there should be more provision for young people in Hatfield when the pandemic has been eased. There's more and more buildings going up and nothing to do. When we get them at 8, then we know them and they see us in the town centre and feel part of the community. St John's organises an open youth night where around 100 kids come and have unstructured fun as well as taking care of disabled adults. Community centre is always looking for volunteers, which has become a challenge in recent years. Everyone in the Hatfield constituency, there's a lot of volunteer jobs out there to do. Fill your boots up, go. If you're sitting there, you get yourself a volunteer job. I've been there part of the homeless shelter in Hatfield as a attendant. You don't have to do 2 hours a day. If you're not great at stand up, your 2 feet, bad back or whatever, 2 hours a day. You can put in 2 hours of time a day at your own time just to give a bit of in the kitchen or making sure the place is tidy, like a convener facilitator. Absolutely. What a name to it? It's got a lovely name to it, convener facilitator. We'll end our coverage now of this week's PMQs. Our reporters today were Jennifer Scott, Paul Seddon, and Richard Morris. Thanks for following along with us. So we're going to look at Nhs Pay Rise. How much will staff be paid? This is today. The row over pay rise for NHS staff has dominated this week in Westminster. The government has recommended that staff in England should receive a 1% pay rise this year. Hello, Malaka. How you doing, buddy? Many other public sector workers will have their pay frozen, with the government warning that the county's finances are under huge pressure because of the pandemic. I'm just doing my journalism, buddy. I'll be with you. I'll be with you in a minute, mate. I'm just doing this. Many other public sector work pay frozen, with the government warning a country finances are under huge pressure because of the pandemic. Health unions have criticised a 1% proposal and one representing nurses is calling for a 12.5% pay rise. Alright, but I'll catch you in a bit. I've been finishing a bit, but anyway, instead. So anyone working in NHS, who's your mother, your auntie, your father, anyone in your family could be a porter, a night porter, just moving bodies from one ward to another. There you go. You're getting some updates on the pay rise in the NHS staff. Did Keir Starmer vote against NHS plan? Prime Minister Boris Johnson told MPs that Sir Keir Starmer voted against the 2019 long-term plan for NHS after Labour leader referred to it. That is not correct. There was no vote on the NHS funding bill 2019-20 during its main stages throughout Parliament. Sir Keir referred to the plan, saying that it committed the government to a 2.1% pay rise for the NHS. The government has now recommended the staff in England should receive a 1% pay rise this year. On Tuesday, the head of NHS, Simon Stevens, told a committee of MPs that the plan had indeed assumed a 2.1% pay rise, but also said things have changed since then and it should now be up to the pay review body. What happened next at the PMQs? This is at 10 minutes past 1 today. This is all live, the PMQs. Another session of the Prime Minister questions has come to an end. Here's what happened. Boris Johnson said he would like to correct European Council President Charles Michel claim that the UK had blocked the export of COVID vaccine. The Prime Minister said not a single jab had been blocked, and in the UK opposed vaccine nationalism in all its forms. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer attacked the PM over the proposed 1% pay rise for NHS in England, accusing him of vowing back from a previous pledge to pay more. Boris Johnson said nurses were valued by the government and had seen their pay rise over the last 3 years under the previous pay deal. The Prime Minister also defended his decision to take the UK out of the EU's Erasmus student exchange scheme after SNP claimed it would take opportunities away from young people. Boris Johnson said he wanted to correct the suggestion from the EU Council President Charles Michel that the UK had blocked the export of coronavirus vaccines. The PM said that the UK could be proud of the support the UK has given to the international COVID response, including $448 million towards the COVAX project to get vaccines to poor countries. Labour challenges Johnson's claim on NHS pay as PMQs finishes. Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth interviewed to ask a point of order. He says Boris Johnson said twice that Labour voted against a 2.1% pay rise for nurses debate in Parliament 2019. That is not the case, he tells MPs. He points out Labour's approved the 2.1% pay deal for nurses in 2019 without taking it to vote. He calls for Prime Minister to return to the House to correct the record and says if the PM wants to cut nurses' pay, he should have the courage and conviction to bring a vote back to the House. With that question, the time is over. The Grayling reverse of the tide deforestation. Former Cabinet Minister Chris Grayling asked the last question of PMQ. He says he is passionate about reversing the tide of deforestation and suggests a kite mark scheme for food products in the UK. He says it will allow consumers to see clearly if products come from sustainable sources or from producers who do further damage to the environment. Mr Johnson said it is a very impressive suggestion that he will look into, but says the UK is already leading the world in tackling deforestation. Is Levelling Up agenda fair among northern towns? Labour Dan Jarvis, who is also Mayor of the Sheffield City region, asked if Levelling Up the North is fair when Barnsley needs investment, but money is actually being spent in Chancellor Richmond's constituency in Yorkshire. Boris Johnson said we are devoted in Levelling Up across the entire country, and that counts Barnsley and everywhere else. Labour MP highlights care staff on 0 hours contracts. Labour MP Alison McGovern asked why 375,000 care workers on 0 hours contracts. Boris Johnson said workers in care sector will be among those benefiting from record record rises to national minimum wage. It also says the speed of UK's vaccination programme has offered quick protection to care staff and residents. Smith government is failing young people. Labour's Catherine Smith says the government was failing young people before the pandemic. She said apprenticeship starts had been down by 29% and missed their target of now apprentices by 81%. She asked the PM to urge young people to go to jobs, be fair in her constituency, and to apologise to them for failing them so far. Boris Johnson praises jobs fairs, but says the government could be proud of its record on apprenticeships. Labour MP calls for reduced VAT and beauty salons. Labour Kate Osamar calls for reduced VAT rate of 5% offered to the hospitality industry during the COVID-19 pandemic to be extended to the beauty industry. She accuses the Prime Minister of refusing to listen to the demands of salons. The Prime Minister doesn't reply directly to her point about VAT, but says it's cautious but irreversible. Roadmap for easing restrictions in England will allow for recovery in the sector. Hannah tax Amazon to pay for nurses rises. On the video leak, SDP MP Claire Hannah says there are 16,000 dedicated nurses who the staff the NHS in Northern Ireland, and says the cost of pay for them equates to less than 2% of UK sales by Amazon, whose revenues doubled during the pandemic. She asked what possible reason the PM has for not imposing a modest windfall tax on companies who have benefited during the crisis in order to properly pay through staff who have worked so hard in the NHS. Boris Johnson says she makes an important point about the discrepancy in tax paid online by companies and physical businesses, and promises it is an issue that the Chancellor is trying to address. We have a short break there, guys. Thank you ever so much for coming. It's been a great show. Just going to have a short break, guys. I'll be straight back. Give me Sir Keir Starmer. It's about Sir Keir Starmer. I'm not one for Sir Keir Starmer, but it's different from listeners. I believe it's different from listeners. Let's listen to this. I love it. Hello.
Elsewhere in the public sector, there's a pay increase in place, and we've proposed to make sure that people do get a pay rise. I think it is fair to take into account all of the considerations, the incredible hard work of those in the NHS, which means
what's the group that doesn't like the old fashioned family disturbed that we have another program here in which we're increasing the marriage penalty. Second thing, we have loan forgiveness on farms based on ethnicity. Okay, some people are going to get a forgiveness, some people aren't. I think that's incredibly divisive. I think we started out with a divisive inaugural speech right off the bat, and to go down this route is only going to create divisiveness in America. The third thing, to have a bill this high spending with the Federal Reserve printing about this amount of money is inevitably going to result in inflation. I feel so sorry for young people today as the cost of housing goes through the roof. I don't know how they're going to be able to afford a house, but we also have increase in food costs, increase in energy costs. I don't want to call it the Joe Biden inflation, but I'm afraid that's where we're headed. The fourth thing, in the rush from judgment, giving checks to people incarcerated. I've talked to my correctional officers about this. I don't know how they're supposed to feel, and they have to work every day, and the people that they're taking care of are going to be getting checks out of this. And finally, I've had two municipalities in my district in which I've been contacted, in which the amount of money they're getting is over 10 times what they feel would make them whole. So I think we're being very reckless about the degree to which we're spending money here. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Missouri reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 45 seconds to the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Plaskett.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 45 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope my colleague from Wisconsin will not leave at this time, as he's talked about Black Lives Matter. How dare you say that Black Lives Matter, Black people do not understand old-fashioned families. Despite some of the issues, some of the things that you have put forward that I've heard out of your mouth in the Oversight Committee, in your own district, we have been able to keep our families alive for over 400 years, and the assault on our families to not have Black lives or not even have Black families. How dare you say that we are not interested in families in the Black community? That is outrageous. That should be stricken down. I was going to talk about the American Rescue Plan. We know that this is going to provide relief to not only Black lives, Black Americans, but all Americans, that we are interested in children and in their welfare. And at this time, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Gentleman from Missouri reserves.
Gentleman from Missouri reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, the Democratic Caucus Chairman, and the distinguished member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Jeffries.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The COVID-19 pandemic is a once-in-a-century crisis. It requires a once-in-a-century comprehensive, compassionate, and continuing congressional response. That is what the American Rescue Plan is all about. More than 500,000 Americans have died. Hundreds of thousands of businesses have closed. Almost 30 million Americans infected by the coronavirus. Tens of millions of Americans dealing with unemployment or food insecurity or on the brink of homelessness. So much pain, suffering, and death, and our Republican colleagues want us to do nothing? What is wrong with you? We are going to act with the fierce urgency of now. We will crush the virus. We will provide direct relief to everyday Americans who are struggling. We will revive the economy. We will send the American Rescue Plan to President Biden's desk. We will build back better for the people. Help is on the way.
Gentleman, time has expired. The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the gentleman from New York, and I will remind him that with passage of this bill, his state's 3 million seniors could see a cut to Medicare of $27 billion over the next 10 years. And I would also like to remind the Speaker that CBO says that without any additional stimulus, our economy later on in this year will be the highest GDP growth that we have seen in 15 years. So that help of extra government spending is not necessary to bail out your friends and allies who are in the governor's mansion in New York or California. Happy to yield 2 minutes to the fine gentleman from Pennsylvania.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the ranking member for yielding. Previous speaker said Republicans want to do nothing to help, which is false, untrue. Members in this body came together during an unprecedented crisis and passed 5 bills to provide much needed relief and pave the way to defeat the virus. And I believe that all of us continue to support targeted help for those who need it. But that's not what this bill is. This bill may have made sense a year ago, but why would we print and borrow $2 trillion when we're so close to crushing this virus and returning to a way of life that all Americans sacrifice? Why give $130 billion to schools and not require them to open when the CDC says it's safe, and at a time when so many kids are desperate for personal social interaction? Why provide $350 billion to states that shut down their economies even though their revenues are at record highs? Why send $1,400 checks to individuals when the majority of those receiving the checks never lost any income? People want to get back to work. So why make it harder, as we're doing in this bill, by giving them a bonus to stay home? The answer is this bill is not just about COVID relief. It's about enacting the largest progressive policy wish list of all time. Mr. Speaker, we can do better than this, and the American people deserve better. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Missouri reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'll remind the gentleman that the push to give $2,000 to every citizen under a certain income level was former President Donald Trump's idea. He campaigned on that. I guess the Republicans have had a change of heart now that it's a different president. I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, the distinguished chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee, Ms. Maloney.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I strongly support this bill, and the Oversight Committee, which I chair, is responsible for the provisions in this package that provide funding to states, local governments, tribes, and territories. When we began our work, hundreds upon hundreds of community leaders reached out to us asking for help. They told us the relief in this bill would mean recovery instead of recession. Democrats answered that call, and today we are delivering $362 billion in dedicated aid to cities and localities across this nation, and they need it. 1.4 million essential workers have already been laid off due to state and local budget shortfalls that threaten the very fabric of our society. This relief means that our first responders, our teachers, transit, sanitation, everybody that's working, our public servants, continue serving our children, helping our neighborhoods, and protecting our communities as we see the fight against the pandemic through to the end. This bill will provide local governments dedicated support for the first time since the pandemic struck. It can be used for vaccines, increased testing, and countless jobs. Cities across this nation, states have lost billions in expected tax revenue. This bill helps. The Oversight Committee also delivered a provision providing emergency paid leave for federal employees to prevent the spread of the virus, as well as critical oversight for provisions to ensure transparency of this full $1.9 trillion package. The American Rescue Plan will rebuild our pandemic-torn nation from the ground up and stronger than ever. Everybody should vote for this bill.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the lady from New York, and I would like to remind her that in her home state, she has 16% of the country's homeless population in the United States. But under this bailout, CBO projects that precisely $0 of the $5 billion that is in this bill will go to help the homeless population this coming year. With that said, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the leader of the Working Black Party, Mr. McCarthy.
Gentleman from California for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin, I want to thank Congressman Jason for his work as the ranking Republican on budget. Mr. Speaker, I know the Democrats in the House are excited because all their work has even transpired all the way to Nevada, because now the Socialist Democratic wing of the party has taken over there as well. From HR 1, devoting to defund the police, House Democrats have abandoned any pretense of unity. They passed 3 major bills in 1 month with 0 bipartisan support. Today, they plan to pass another. Like the others, it represents a missed opportunity for Congress to focus on the real needs of Americans. At 1.9 trillion in new spending, the so-called
There you have it, ladies and gents. America pretty much in the same predicament. They're in a public austerity as well. Yeah, pandemic influenza is crashing all the nations across the globe. Absolutely. PMQs. UK, back to UK politics before we move on. I know some of you loyal listeners and observers also are American, so that's why I wanted to play that to give you a bit of an insight what's going on around the world. It's not just us, it's you as well. It's everyone. We're all the same situation. I'm not sure what your NHS staff or the procurement for your NHS staff and their pay bracket. I don't know what's going on in the US. Possibly something similar to what's happened with us. Joe Biden and Co will obviously be tackling that in future months ahead, I suppose. PMQs, they give MPs a vote on NHS pay, says Sir Keir Starmer. Not backing Sir Keir Starmer today, I'm just giving some Labour supporters a different insight within UK politics. So I'm not just biased on my projection of UK politics. Boris Johnson has been urged to give MPs a vote on NHS pay in England at Prime Minister's question. Sir Keir said a proposed 1% rise amounted to a pay cut once inflation had been taken into account. Even his own MPs know he's got this wrong. The Labour leader told PM. Mr Johnson said he would study what an independent pay review panel says when it reports in May. But the government wanted to give NHS workers a rise amid a public sector pay freeze. The government has recommended a 1% increase to pay body, saying it is all the country can afford at the present time. Clap for carers. NHS in England had budgeted for a 2.1% rise this year before the pandemic. The service chief Simon Stevens confirmed on Tuesday. Sir Keir said that the government had broken its promise to health workers, and he accused the PM of choosing to shut the door in their face at the first opportunity, having previously clapped for carers on the steps of Downing Street. He also contrasted the proposed pay deal for the NHS with the 45,000 pay rise awarded to the PM's former advisor Dominic Cummings, who has since left Downing Street. I've got an announcement to make with the census thing that's gone through at everyone's door. I'm going to do it now, actually, before I move on, because I don't want you guys to get fined. You can get fined up to £1,000 for not making it's an online, so make sure you do it. It takes about 5 minutes. It's so easy. The simple questions: how many people live in your household? You have someone stay on, etc. So you just got to put in your details. You might think, oh, it's asking for too much. You suffer with anxiety, maybe. Put it in, get it done. Don't get your £1,000 fine. It's not worth it. Sir Keir said the mask really is slipping, and we can see what the Conservative Party now stand for: cutting pay for nurses, putting taxes on these. He said the opportunity to change course, but he refused. So if he's so determined to cut the NHS staff pay, he will at least show some courage and put it to a vote in this Parliament. The good thing is, it's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. You've had, everyone's been furloughed off. Some people, as myself, hasn't actually been in work for a series of time because I've had a bit of a split of a marriage, trying to get myself back on my feet. I've been in, finished a business management course, university. I'm trying to better my prosperity. Hiya, how you doing there? I'm trying to better my prosperity, get back on my feet, get back out there, working in a formal job position, which I've, quite frankly deserve. You come by day in, day out, listen to my couldn't call it journalism. You know, it's a broadsheet journalism emphasizer. Part of the aristocracy social elite, aren't I? Absolutely, most definitely. I'm not abrupt with my mannerism. I don't try and force people to subscribe, but I'm overwhelmed with people come through, supporting. I always say thank you for listening. Loyal observers, enjoy the cast, enjoy the show. Steady course. A Labour leader highlighted reported comments from the unarmed Conservative MPs calling the proposed pay deal inept and unacceptable. He claimed that NHS pay had fallen in real terms by more than £800. We're going to look at the analysis by a reality check. Did Sir Keir Starmer vote against NHS plan? Boris Johnson told MP Sir Keir Starmer voted against the 2019 long-term plan for NHS after the Labour leader referred. So this is me checking somewhat qualitative evidence, because quantitative evidence could be, a series of biased commitment by different analysts, or one-sided to support Sir Keir Starmer. So we're going to look into a bit more in depth by different writers, see where the root of the problem is. I wasn't there in 2019, so it so rightly says that is not correct. We had no vote on an NHS funding bill to 1920 during its main stages for our Parliament. Again, this quantitative evidence depends on who's doing the analyst reality check. Could be a Labour Party, Boris, perhaps. We don't know. Just saying, just in case, let's not jump into conclusions. Or it could be definitely just made a mistake here. He quite possibly has, but then again, he quite possibly hasn't. We can't believe everything in the propaganda. At the end of the day, it's propaganda. Sir Keir had referred to the plan, saying that it committed the government to a 2.1% pay rise for the NHS. Same as Pirates of the Caribbean actor. It was published, polarised all over the tabloid, written off that he was a woman beater. But in his defence, the qualitative evidence didn't show no visual. So that was, again, quantitative evidence, which I'm suggesting now could quite well be the case, but may well not be the case. Just saying. So I'm not sitting on any side of the fence. I'm just saying, to be 100% sure, you need to know where the writers, the journalism's coming from. On Tuesday, the head of NHS England, Sir Simon Stevens, told a committee of MPs that the plan had indeed assumed a 2.1% rise. They also said things have changed since then and that it should now be up to the pay review body. That's what the police and all the other legislators in a court scenario need to look into: qualitative evidence, not just made up quantitative evidence for the sake of sheep's heads. Mr. Johnson said a massive debt was owed to NHS workers, and the government had asked the review board to treat their pay award exceptionally in comparison with other public sector workers. We're increasing pay for nurses. We're massively increasing our investment in NHS, he told MPs. We are steering a steady course, whereas Sir Keir weaves and wobbles from one week to the next. He defended the government's record on the investment in NHS training and recruitment and said he would study the pay board's final report in May. What do the NHS workers in England earn? The lowest minimum full-time salary for newly employed drivers, housekeeping assistants, nursery assistants and domestic support workers is £18,005 a year. The starting salary is almost newly qualified nurses for £24,907. The staff in high-cost areas such as London get extra payments. According to NHS Digital, the average paid nurse is £33,788. Not bad pay, is it? The NHS in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland is run by the devolved administrations. The Scottish Government has announced that 2021 pay negotiations will be delayed until the summer. Staff have been given an inch, which will form part of the new settlement. Staff will also get a one-off £500 bonus as a thank you for their efforts during the pandemic. NHS workers in Northern Ireland were promised of a one-off £500 special recognition payment in January, and the Welsh Government has said it will not set a ceiling of 1%. It's the last but not least segment. I'd like you guys, listeners, you all listeners, please subscribe. Please get more people on board, because I want to do some quick research. Get you guys to intervene, not to discriminate my my broadcast, but to get involved. Tell me how your family are suffering with their NHS workers and what they need this pay rise to help manageable with the hard work they've been doing through the red alert. They deserve it, don't they? I mean, they are saving Private Ryan, aren't they? At the end of the day, they're putting their life at risk to save others in such circumstances. They deserve the pay rise. Canvey Island, right, she slept, has finally been locked up. Marty Reynolds of Bardwick Avenue, Canvey Island, Essex, was found in the town centre. His victim returned to her dress at night and invited Reynolds to stay over as a friend. She told police what had happened, and Reynolds was convicted of an offence on Wednesday, December 9th last year, following a trial in Salisbury Court, Crown Court. He was found not guilty on the second rape charge involving a different woman at Bournemouth Crown Court last Friday, March 5th. He was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. Detective Constable Christopher Panther of Dorset Police said Marty Reynolds targeted the victim as she slept. At no point had she given consent. She was taken advantage of by someone she believed she trusted. I would like to thank her for coming forward to report this offence and the courage that she has shown in standing up to Reynolds to say what he did to her was wrong and supporting the court process. I hope this case will again demonstrate that Dorset Police take the offence extremely serious. He will always listen to and support anyone who reports matters to be held accountable. If they have been a victim of rape or sexual assault and you want to report directly to police, please call 101 and ask to be put in contact with a specially trained police officer. It's a devastating offence, guys need to think before they act. They've been invited over to stay as a friend. It doesn't give him a righteousness to then seek further action on any woman that's staying. I would not invite a woman over to stay and allegedly attack a victim. I've had actually one of my good friends in Hertfordshire stay. My friend was a friend from when I was in Hatfield. Shared the same bed, nothing. Just a friend, that's it. As far as it goes, just leave it as that. You don't go any further. Why do men feel like that's an invite to take it further? It's not. Don't do it. It's a disgrace to humanity. Why are men allegedly thinking that is a protocol? So you invite me over a friend, I can then get my leg over. I do not know. Shocking, absorbing information. That is no friend. A friend is a friend, a female friend. She could be the most prettiest lady in the woman. No need for you to think that's an invite. That is not an invitation. So there you go. Just because you smiled at her when you talked to her, had a laugh and a giggle, does not mean that's an invitation. Always remember that. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate the loyal listeners. I'm part of the Aristoxy Social Elite. I've got great aspirations that I've been brought up by and surrounded upon me, and I'm a great guy. I'm a gentleman, so to speak. Some listeners that may know me may say different from my few of my flaws back in 1983. But yeah, I've always had great aspirations in life. My granddad was in World War II. I was brought up around good, good well-beings, professional, etiquette people, pragmatic with sense and style. I just want to say thank you. God bless. Have a wonderful Wednesday. The lack of sun, despite the weather. It's a lovely day for a duck as it's raining. Thank you on YouTube, you all listening. I'm guessing that is Tony Angel, or could well be Tarek Khan. I'm not quite sure. My listeners who come through, they don't always comment, so I just want to say thank you. God bless. Have a good day. I'll be back hopefully sometime again tomorrow. Take care. One love. Speak soon. Mother's Day, I'm not here. Mother's Day Sunday, so take care.